G'day, I'm Roland Hearn, and this is A Walk in the Garden. When this video goes to air, it'll be Easter Sunday morning, and there is no more special day on the calendar for the expression of love and overcoming our brokenness than Easter Sunday morning. So I'm going to go take a seat in the shade, and I'm in my backyard and in my own garden once again, but my desire this morning is to just talk a little bit about how important this idea of Easter and love overcoming brokenness really is.
Good boy, good boy, good boy. Yeah, you're lovely, aren't you, eh? You're lovely.
Love is for all beyond.
There is no day on the calendar that reflects love as much as does Easter Sunday morning. Of course, for most of us, our own birthday is no doubt a day that we celebrate love. And Christmas morning is a day in the Christian calendar that represents the birth of Jesus. But for people anywhere and everywhere, it is a day of family getting together and just celebrating being family. So that is definitely a day of love as well. And for many people, the idea of Easter is about a weekend to get away. Those that analyze it closely will recognize that there are close connections between Easter Sunday and fertility rituals. There is this melding of traditions that comes together around Easter, as there is for Christmas. If you look a little bit deeper, those that understand something about the Jewish faith would know that Easter is also for the Jewish people the day of Passover. And so there is this reality in which Easter is a weekend of celebration. But we miss something if we don't understand how love is represented on Easter Sunday morning. For the Christian, it is the day that celebrates Christ's rising again. That resurrection is specifically about the power of God. God is love, overcoming the power of brokenness. Many people like to focus on Easter morning from a Christian perspective on the idea of the forgiveness of sins, that when Christ died upon the cross, he did so representing our sin and our guilt, and that death upon the cross, and that the resurrection allows there to be forgiveness of sins, and the resurrection allows there to be eternal life as a result. But in truth, any fair analysis of the scriptural story will show you that there is much more to this idea of the resurrection than is captured in just the idea of guilt and forgiveness. You see, when Christ lived on this earth, he lived as one that was representing God in his life. And to have a Christian story that focuses exclusively on his birth and his death as the major themes misses the actual point. Christ lived by the power of love, a life that represented God being in this world. His death was as a result of human struggle with ambition, with power, with authority, and ultimately, the truth is, if you dig deep enough, everybody in that story was struggling with their shame. This is a shame culture, and people's position in society is represented by the extent to which they honour that space, and if they don't, then they will receive shame. But as we've talked before, our own personal struggle with worthlessness is a struggle with shame. Shame ultimately is our wrestling with our capacity to have or not to have effective relationships. So the ideas of rejection and abandonment and isolation are all concepts that can be connected into the idea of shame. When Christ died on that cross on a hill outside of Jerusalem, every piece of that story actually represents the idea of shame. So you have this individual that at the most basic level had lived a life of austerity, had grown up with poor people and in poverty, had almost nothing to reflect the worth of his life, and he was destined for nothingness. But as he spoke, it was very, very clear to those that heard him that he spoke with a wisdom and an authority that represented a new way of seeing the world. And it was this new way of seeing the world, a way that put everybody on the same level, that addressed individual human needs. It was that way that caused authority figures and the ambitious to want to deal with him in a way that would take him out of the equation. And so the crucifixion was the result. But in so doing, it became the reality that every part of that process represented shame. The way that it came about, the process that he went through, the injustice of that process, the deep, deep suffering that was placed upon his life. The crucifixion on a wooden cross in itself is a symbol of shame. Being outside of the city gates is a symbol of shame. Being identified with criminals, all of these things represented shame. But in truth, because he was this one that lived a life without sin, without shame, and died such a shameful death, the resurrection takes upon itself the reality of the most effective response to shame there is. In fact, when Christ died, the one representing the love of God became the one who represented all of humanity and represented all of humanity's shame. So the extent to which our sin is forgiven is a prelude to the sense in which we are offered wholeness and healing from our brokenness. And our brokenness is deeply entrenched in our broken relationship from God. You and I were born to have a relationship of love. We were never intended to experience shame the way that we experience it in this life. Christ's death and resurrection on Easter Sunday morning is God reaching into to all of humanity, and into your life specifically and my life specifically, to touch us with divine love and bring us out of our shame into a wonderful tomorrow. A lot of people represent faith in the terms of believing specific facts and for want of a better word, truths. And of course, our cognitive processes can't be divorced from faith. But you want to know what faith really is? It's allowing ourselves to be loved by the one that rose from the dead. You might struggle with whether or not historically that actually happened. But the truth is that such love makes sense in and of itself, and to allow our hearts to be open and vulnerable to that love actually is what this walk in the garden is all about. To find ourselves back in that place of love that was created for humanity is the journey of life. It's the journey that I want to take. I pray that it'll be the journey that you will take, and that these truths that we wrestle with as we walk in the garden would be opportunities to come to discover how rich and wonderful your life really is. I hope you have a wonderful Easter. Bless you. And until next week, keep walking in your garden.